This is Tom Duty, middle-aged American living in New Jersey near the Lincoln Tunnel. If you were to visit my website, you would type Howdy Doody into Google. You'll find the correct spelling of the famous puppet. You then combine Tom Duty in a Google search for my site. Reading from Vanity Fair magazine, a recent issue. It's now October 2015. This Vanity Fair is September issue. Mark Zuckerberg is on the cover. Subject is UVA rape. It's a follow-up to a UVA rape story done by Rolling Stone magazine a year ago. I'll have a couple of comments here at the beginning, and then it'll be exclusively text from Rolling Stone magazine. I occasionally read recent text from popular press, movie scripts, a variety of things. This choice has a special motive. When I read the Rolling Stone magazine a year ago, I accepted it as credible, never questioned it. And the story was quickly discredited. Then a year later, I just kind of felt weird about it. A year later, I find out in detail in this Vanity Fair report what came to this bogus story. Discredited and false, and no one is saying the story is false. It just doesn't have the credit that was worthy of mass public opinion. It has not been prosecuted, and quite honestly, I felt stupid learning that a story I believed as valid was not valid, was discredited, was redacted, I think is the phrase that the press has been using. Comment two, prior to turning my attention, my reading to Vanity Fair, is two publications, two writers, same characters, a year apart. The references to these people is not consistent. I got confused. So to help my listeners, I have a very short roster of people referenced in the story. Now, I deliberately omitted people who are referenced, a couple of paragraphs, and then that's that. They do not reoccur in the text, either the Vanity Fair or the Rolling Stone. I purposely chose the people in both articles that are referenced in multiple ways throughout the text. Those are the ones that confuse me. So that roster is in the text attached to this audio. This is part two. UVA's Nicole Eramo, Associate Dean and Counselor to Sex Assault Survivors, by Jenna Thrung, the Cavalier Daily. Skeptical UVA officials, Erdely appears to have relied increasingly on Jackie in her circle of supporters. But her friends knew only what they had been told, which was relatively little and had not always been the same thing. Although Jackie had told Erdely her story in graphic detail, she wasn't always eager to maintain contact with the reporter. Jackie seemed to have cut off contact with Erdely, or tried to, and at one point, Renda said she received an email from Erdely asking if she had heard from Jackie lately, because Erdely hadn't. After getting Erdely's message, Renda contacted Jackie directly and told her if the story was becoming too much, she could drop out of participation at any time. Jackie told Renda that she was fine, just stressed about school. Jackie wavered on whether she should name the fraternity explicitly. Pinkleton felt that Erdely was trying to manipulate Jackie into cooperating, though Pinkleton's view of the dynamic would gradually become more complicated. Pinkleton remembers contacting Erdely on one occasion to tell her that Jackie didn't want to name her in the story. Erdely called back confused, saying if she hadn't spoken to Jackie, who did want to name her in the story. At first, I thought Sabrina was manipulating us. Pinkleton told me. Later, everything unraveled. She came to a different conclusion. Jackie was manipulating us as well. In October, according to Pinkleton, arguments and tensions mounted among Jackie, Surface, Pinkleton, and Erdely. Surface and Pinkleton were trying to shield Jackie, or help Jackie shield herself. For her part, Jackie seemed uncertain about how she wanted to be represented in the story. She went from not wanting her name to be used at all to just her first name. Pinkleton said she started evading questions from us and confessing more to Sabrina. And Pinkleton went on, I just felt like she was really starting to tell us things that didn't make sense. We offered her help in standing up to Sabrina. But she didn't want it. Pinkleton noted a few worrying signs as the story was closing and Rolling Stone was calling to confirm various pieces of information. I remember telling the fact checkers that UV rape was nothing I had ever heard of. Other rape prevention advocates at the school had never heard the term either. The week the Rolling Stone story was to come out, the four women, Renda, Surface, Pinkleton, and Jackie, were scrambling to prepare for what they suspected would be a bombshell. On Tuesday, November 18th, a friend of Sara Surface found a copy of the magazine on a newsstand. The friend took pictures of the pages with her cell phone and sent them to Surface, who downloaded them to a laptop. All four women had been anticipating the story for months. Some of them had come to distrust Erdely. Nobody wanted to read it alone. They wanted to see one another's reaction, talk about it afterward. Everybody come to my apartment now, texted Renda. She lived off campus, far enough away for most student housing to feel truly removed. Everyone arrived right away. We were really nervous, and we knew it was going to be really bad. Pinkleton told me, bad for UVA, bad for Dean Eramo, whom the women, save perhaps Jackie, regarded as their mentor. Once the women had gathered, Renda read the story aloud, detail by harrowing detail. Jackie was identified in first name only, and the leader of her alleged rapist, as noted, was given the pseudonym Drew. Three allegedly unsympathetic friends, whom Jackie had sought out in the aftermath of the attack, were also given pseudonyms: Cindy, Randall, and Andy. Renda read aloud the story of Jackie's brutal gang rape at the hands of several men at Phi Kappa Psi fraternity house. She read aloud from reporting the incident to the police or to the university, as some of the women had feared. Dean Eramo became the face of the administration and was depicted as unsympathetic and indifferent to a pervasive rape culture. Pinkleton listened to the horrific details. She said she thought, oh, I didn't hear that. And oh, I didn't know that. While they were aware of the outlines of the story, much of the specific information was being imparted for them for the first time. Looking back on it now, Pinkerton remembers that Jackie seemed upset as Renda read the story, but did not break down. At one point, Pinkleton reached over to pat Jackie back and comfort her. Renda told her that hearing the story read aloud was like being hit over the head with a baseball bat, because the details of Jackie's rape were so shocking, because the dean had been treated so unfairly. After Renda finished reading, Jackie's boyfriend, who had driven her to Renda's apartment, took her home. Once Jackie had departed, the three women left behind looked at one another, realizing that there was a lot they didn't know about what happened to Jackie, and maybe a lot they didn't know about Jackie. Protesters demonstrated at UVA Phi Kappa Psi fraternity November 2014, soon after the Rolling Stone article appeared. Pick note by Ryan M. Kelly, The Daily Progress, AP Images. The Day, a rape on campus, was nearly every laptop before, during, and after classes. At UVA, there were countless I stand with Jackie messages on Facebook, Yik Yak, and other social media. There was a lot of anger at Jackie's friends, Cindy, Randall, Andy, who were portrayed as unsupportive in Rolling Stone. Renda portrayed as unsupportive in Rolling Stone. Renda described to me the protests that followed the story. Vandals painted UVA Center for Rape Studies on the side of Phi Kappa Psi fraternity house. They threw rocks through the windows. The Phi Kappa Psi brothers moved out. Especially distressing to Renda was the sign she saw at the protest march, "Protect our women." The sign seemed to epitomize all The damsel in distress tropes that women like Renda had been trying to dispel. A difficult task anywhere, but particularly in a place like UVA, with an ethic in some quarters of chivalrous paternalism. I remember feeling really overwhelmed, like this was going to be set back all the positive work that we had done, Renda told me. There were only two types of women in Erdely's story, she explained, bimbos and victims. There were no women of agency, she said. One key issue from Renda's perspective was that much of the work he had been trying to help women who had suffered as much less violence, less dramatic versions of Jackie's story, the so-called gray area of rape, one that Renda says is all too common at UVA and other college campuses. For her part, Pinkleton was annoyed that she and Surface weren't identified as working to prevent sexual harassment at sexual assault at UVA, nor was anyone else. Erdely acted as if there were no feminists or any supporting survivors. Pinkleton told me Pinkleton was also upset. Yes, sir. I'm waiting for my wife. I'm just reading. It's just, yes, sir. Because I'm reading to my YouTube channel. I'm a blogger. I'm reading a newspaper article, Vanity Fair. That's the end of page. Damn it. I have this dimmer switch on my camera, and unfortunately, I didn't turn my screen off. Officer, can I continue if I just turn the camera off? No, I'll turn the camera off. I won't be filming. I'll just be recording my voice. That's okay, right? All right, thank you. Ha ha. Continue, page. I could turn my screen off and continue recording, which is devious, so I won't. Ciao. No visual for the rest of my. I'm on page 16. I'm going to 15. So camera is off. Okay, now my camera is off and my screen is dimmed. Readers, I will not pardon that interruption. It could be the most exciting thing of this session. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope I'm finished with the local police. These were either NYPD or Port Authority Bus Terminal Police. Sort of the same thing, but sort of different. They all carry guns. There was no women of agency, She said, one key issue for Renda's perspective was that as much of her work had been trying to help women who suffered a much less violent, much less dramatic version of Jackie's story, the so-called gray area of rape, one that Renda said is all too common. In UVA, the other college campuses, for her part, Pinkleton was annoyed that she and Surface weren't identified as working to prevent sexual assault. At UVA, nor was anyone else. Erdely acted like there were no feminists or anyone supporting survivors. Pinkleton told me, Pinkleton, who was upset that Erdely had destroyed the administration's credibility, and falsely, there was no one at the school who was willing to listen to the story and believe you. Jackie's circle of supporters were unenviable situation. Were in an unenviable situation. They ostentatiously knew that anyone about what they knew more than anyone about what happened to Jackie, but began to appreciate that they really didn't know what they knew, or whether what they thought they knew was true. At some point during the 2 weeks that followed the story's publication, Jackie told Pinkleton and Surface what she claimed to be a real name of Drew, the alleged ringleader of her rape. Pinkleton said when she and Surface looked him up, they realized he didn't fit the story. And there was no one by his name as a member of Phi Kappa Psi fraternity. Then it began to get worse. Washington Post reporter T. Rees Shapiro, one of the many reporters who had descended on UVA, was attempting to speak to the student Jackie identified as Drew. We realized the chances of it happening at Phi Kappa Psi at that point were slim to none, said Pinkleton. And they realized that they had, in Pinkleton's words, a moral obligation to tell Shapiro about discrepancies in Jackie's story. Sara Surface added, at a certain point, Alex and I had to start making decisions about Jackie versus every other survivor in our cause. It wasn't a distinction that we, as advocates, ever thought we would need to make. On Tuesday, December 2nd, 2 weeks after the Rolling Stones story, Surface and Pinkleton had dinner with Jackie and told her they were concerned that the person Jackie had identified to them didn't match the description of Drew's character name in the story. Pinkleton said that Jackie avoided answering their questions. She began to cry and told them she was stressed and tired and overwhelmed. On Tuesday, December 4th, Surface and Pinkleton met with Shapiro, the Post reporter, and essentially compared notes. They all identified what seemed were discrepancies in Jackie's story. We just sat there, like, holy shit, what's going on? Pinkleton told me. Meanwhile, Sara and I, minds blown. But we also felt we had been betrayed. Didn't we just have it wrong? Later, that Thursday, when the traditional lighting of the lawn and students stringing lights, singing, playing music, and have a party, Pinkleton, Surface, and Renda missed the lighting and instead met with Jackie at her apartment. We need to tell her what the Washington Post article was coming out, destroying her story the very next day. because we didn't want mental breakdown suicide going on. Pinkleton told me the meeting included a University affiliate counselor in the event some sort of emergency arose. We all got together to say, Jackie, this is what's coming. How are you prepared for this? Renda told me what was going on. They feared was in a virulent backlash against a false accusation and an onslaught of victim blaming. The women wanted to support Jackie because they sensed that what was about to follow would be difficult. They also gingerly wanted to tell some explanations from the inconsistencies in her story. They told her, my camera is not on. I just got scolded by the police. You're earlier than I expected you. Hola. Um, this has been Tom Duty, middle-aged American living in New Jersey near the Lincoln Tunnel. If you were to visit my website, you'd type Howdy Doody into Google. Stop it. Tom Duty in a Google search for my site. Thank you for listening. Have a good day, good evening, a restful night's sleep. Ciao. Could you take the paper out of my hand, please? Grazie.